look, I get it. Like, we have to maintain the things that we have. But if you're telling me we can't properly pay our officers unless we raise taxes, this $2 million is going for our officers. Sorry.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the 435 podcast. I'm Robert Macfarlane. This is episode 8. We had Michelle Tanner in the episode, and we had tons of conversation around the proper role of government. We looked back 2 years at when she ran for city council and what has changed since then. We talked about woke ideology and how she's combating that here in Southern Utah. But hope you guys enjoy the episode. Tune in, make sure you hit subscribe and like it, share with your friends in Southern Utah, because we are going to be following this election all summer long. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Man, I don't know if I could do economics.
Yeah, I know.
I do the political side, but like getting in the economic side, like the creature from Jekyll Island and like the understanding of the Fed, it threw me for such a loop. It made me not productive for probably like 2 months.
I want to read that. My dad is a big economics buff. He has a degree in economics. He has a lot of degrees, but that's one. And I'll sit down and talk to him, and he can just talk for hours about all things economics. And I wish that I had some of that formal education, but yeah, it's super, super interesting and relevant.
Yeah. But so your education's in the medical field.
Right.
But this is the craziest thing I found. I was getting ready for, we got the Derek Legg podcast up right here. And we're going to get to this because I want some response from what you did. Because this was almost 2 years ago.
It's been a while. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is.
So, and a lot's happened. And so I kind of want to go back to it. Right.
Awesome.
But man, I got off track. What was I saying?
My background.
Oh yeah, your background.
Field, and
the IHC let you go.
Yeah,
they legitimately let you go. That is the craziest.
So to be clear, so I was an employee of Southwest Emergency Physicians Group, which has a contract with IHC to staff some of their emergency departments. So I was not a direct employee to Intermountain. I was a direct employee to the private physicians group. Got it. Who had the contract with Intermountain Healthcare. And so, yeah, ultimately that termination came from the private ER physicians group.
Hey, why did they set up the structure like that?
It's interesting that they do it that way. Right now, they do that for, I believe, just the ER, which it's advantageous definitely for the ER group to do it that way.
Okay.
I don't know
in what way.
Eventually they're able to negotiate higher amounts than what they would make otherwise if they were a direct employee to Intermountain is my assumption of, why it's advantageous that way.
There's a little union element to that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's another communist ideal.
Yeah.
Unions, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of unions was like, what?
Right.
My grandfather, Robert Macfarlane the first, he was a union negotiator, and he was anti-union, right? And so he was like, that was the big conversation in the turn of the 19th century, was unionizing for big corporations and, hospitals and things like that. Right. The interesting thing is it has a flip side probably effect to the hospital. So little story, my brother-in-law, not uncle, my brother-in-law, he has a plastics manufacturing company. So he has these big machines that pump out, injection molding, but you had to have some human element to like go from station to station and then barrel bins and stuff to stack up, which they totally have computerized nowadays in China, and like little robots making stuff and moving stuff around.
Yeah.
But he had somebody pretend to get hurt, truthfully, pretend to get hurt. He was sued. He had it on camera. Cost him $500,000 to settle.
Yeah.
To settle. And you know what he did?
What?
He went straight to a HR company, a temp agency, only ever hired from the temp agency. That way he could fire at any time. And if there was a problem, it would have to go through the temp agency. Yeah. And any lawsuits went through the temp agency. And then the temp agency would weigh the case and be like, nope, we're not going to pursue that.
Yeah.
And it would save him as the manufacturer.
Right.
But he literally had to do everything he could not to hire people because of the fear that it would put him out of business, because it almost put him out of business. Yeah. You know, it wasn't like he was making a ton of money, especially at the time.
Right.
But
it's so sad, that world that we live in, because so much of what we do in medicine, so much of what we do in politics, in, municipal government, it's all about liability and risk and making decisions of, am I at higher risk of getting sued if I do this? Am I at lower risk if I getting
firing
sued of doing
somebody,
this?
firing somebody for cause, for no reason, and they get to be an arm's length away from it as well, right? There's another advantage, right? So it's interesting, these like structures and stuff that we all fit into. But okay, so the first question, I shared that questionnaire list with you.
Yeah, it's been a while ago though now.
You're like, I
in
didn't
my
look at
world,
it.
I'm like, I don't remember what I had for breakfast, let's be honest. So go ahead and refresh my memory.
You had patience today. What did you do today? Like what did your day look like?
So today, I usually try to keep lighter days on Fridays, but I'm actually training a nurse in my office right now. So my day was a little bit longer today, just, teaching her kind of the ins and outs. But we did some IV infusions. I did medical consultation, someone who is suffering from long COVID symptoms. Try to put together a plan for her to get her feeling better. Did some cosmetic injections, trained my nurse how to do Botox and filler. We actually did some Botox today in the armpits for sweating.
Nice.
So that's a really cool one, actually. People
do you
who
know what they call Botox for guys?
Scrotox or Brotox.
Brotox.
Depending on where you put it.
Yeah.
Brotox.
I don't do Scrotox, guys. Sorry.
Depending on where you put it. That never crossed my mind. It didn't even cross my mind.
Hey, it's a thing. I don't do it, but it's a thing.
Hey, Jeff, will you explain to the audience what Scrotox is?
Yeah, let's look into that.
We're going to have to look that up.
If you Google it, you might get some interesting pictures, just saying. Really, the answer to my prayers was service. And that's where I got guided to public service and service above self, right? So lose yourself in the service of others. That's actually the words that came to me after one of my prayers. And so I felt like this was the right thing. I knew when I told my husband, hey, I'm thinking about running for office, I fully expected him to be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We don't have time for this. We're going to lose money. Like, why on earth would we do this? But actually, he was the opposite and was like, that's what you're supposed to do. I back you 100%.
Did you really expect that?
It's so crazy actually watching that back. I'm like, it's probably good for me to hear that, especially when times get hard, because every day is different, right? There's there's good days, there's bad days, but it is always good when you make any big decision in life, right? Whether it's getting married or having kids or, taking on a new position like I did with city council, is being able to know that you were inspired to do that it was the right decision.
Yeah.
Because inevitably in all of those circumstances, we're going to hit trials. We're going to have hard days.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to draw upon the fact that, no, this is the right thing. This was what I was supposed to do, right?
Jeff and I have a running conversation about this every single day, huh, Jeff? Every day.
Absolutely.
It's so crazy how we do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, and then trying to anchor back in, as a spiritual believer, because we can insert whether you're a Christian, whether you're, Baptist or Catholic or Lutheran or Protestant. How many could we name?
Right.
I bet you we could name like 15.
Yeah.
And LDS is in that conversation.
Right.
St. George word of mouth. It's the bane of my existence, but I can't help but go back to it. Somebody posted, we're looking for a biblical Christian church. Bible-based church is how they described it. The comments were insane.
Oh, I bet that was entertaining.
300 comments.
I try to stay off of there.
I couldn't help it. I had to read them.
Maybe I should go on there for entertainment purposes, as if I don't get enough, but
Well, there's the part of the issue really is that we all get stuck in our own mentality of I'm right and you're wrong.
Right.
And it's easy to do that in those social platforms because there's you can hide behind the keyboard a little bit.
Right.
But I'm a big advocate for, we need a digital platform that the St. George community, the Washington community, the county community, right? Southern Utah as a whole, right? Who we are as a heritage. We need a digital place that we can, communicate with each other.
Yes.
In a strong way, but everybody's got to buy in because we haphazardly fell into Facebook.
Right.
And I'm not sure if it's the best platform.
Yeah.
What do
No,
you think?
I am right there with you. Actually, I've had this conversation with a lot of locals, and actually temporarily, we did recorded, I think, 2 or 3 episodes of a podcast, a local mayor and I, because for that same reason, we're like, we need something, a platform to get this information out to locals about what's going on. And social media becomes so toxic, or even just having a good, reliable local news network, right? Like,
wow, that's interesting you bring that up.
So yeah, I hope you have that in the works, because I seriously have had this conversation with so many people how needed that is.
Well, so the 435 podcast, right?
Right.
This whole thing, you're our second recording so far,
Wow.
right? I had Danielle Larkin on before.
Okay.
And we have a strategy through the summer, because what we're really trying to drive home is a get out the vote campaign for this year's election.
Thank you.
We have 3 seats
need that.
that
this
are
is
open.
one of the most important elections.
And you're like,
we've
and
had
I'm not
in
running.
history.
And I'm not running.
And I'm not running. I'm not
running.
up for re-election. So,
Exactly. So we're gonna do a podcast series where we're gonna open it up with the 5 city mayors. So the coalition of the 5 cities. So Santa Clara, Ivins, St. George, Washington, and Hurricane.
Yeah.
So I record Nanette Billings next week, but we're going to roll it out mayors first, because I think it just makes the most sense as we build towards the election, because the election's November 7th, Tuesday. So every Tuesday we're going to roll podcasts out starting May 16th.
So glad you're doing that.
But the idea is that it's just the first step in, as a media organization or as like a news organization, how do you get started? Like, how do you start informing the public? Well, you need journalists, right? And I can't write. And Jeff and I had the conversation. I'm like, Jeff, are you a good writer? He's like, well, I could get by. But yeah, he's not a writer either. But we can talk to people.
Right.
And we know how to ask good questions. So why don't we start this? And then everything else can kind of fall out of that.
And I'll tell you, there are local journalists who are fed up with their current positions, because they're being told that they can only cover certain things that usually are more left-leaning, right?
Interesting, yeah.
I literally
Surprise.
one who wanted to do a story on me from my perspective, and that media outlet wouldn't allow that journalist to. And that journalist just came to me and said, I'm done with this industry. It's gone. It's dead. I can't really do my job. It's propaganda. And so that's coming from journalists. So if we could create something that
I mean, really, this is it. Is it, the attention of the people happens where? Where are people giving their attention? Right. And right now it's fractured into a bunch of different places. Right. And so social media is this one big pillar.
Yeah.
So out of social media, really, if you look at the funnel, the podcast is at the top. If you're giving good conversation, if you're having compelling news conversations, it will get traction on the social media platforms for sure.
Yeah.
Podcasts. So this is going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, any podcast app, right? We're going to syndicate it out. So, and it's mainly listen. We're not really here to watch stuff, right? Playing the clip and some of these other things we might do, but it's really say, let's talk about St. George and what's going on here. So that's what we're doing. That's
so great.
The podcast. So
support you 100%.
Thank you for being on. I hope this is not the first or not the last.
Not the last. Yes.
Not the last. So, going back to your question, have you found like you've lost yourself in the service of others over this last year and a half? Do you feel like you kind of have? I know that was like your true north. But did you have moments or more or less time in that moment?
In some ways, I would say I've found myself rather than lost myself.
Okay.
Because I have felt like this is a calling. And it's been really interesting. It's been definitely huge growing experience, learning new things every single day, whether it be about myself or just about the community or about my job, right?
Right.
So definitely, growing, finding myself, but also, it has been a lot of service as far as very time consuming. I tell people all the time, you can't get into this for the money, because I am hemorrhaging money. If I think of the amount of time, I literally put more time into the city council position than what I put into my business that actually feeds my family and puts a roof over my head. And if I, could shift that time back into my business, I've probably lost 6+ figures just in the amount of time that I lose with my business. But money is not everything. You know, for me, there are things far more important than that in life.
Yeah.
And service is a big aspect of that. I mean, truly, if you want to find happiness in life, I do feel like a lot of that comes from looking outward, not inward, and focusing on others and how can I best serve. So definitely, I think there's been ways where I've lost myself, but also found myself.
Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, has there been moments where you're like, I'm done with this? Can I throw in the towel?
So, and I have people ask me all the time, oh, so you're running again? Or, you know, the opposite of, I would never vote for you. And I'm like, you think I'm going to do this to myself again? Like, why would I put myself through this again?
But there's some good things in the stability of the city council, right? Like if you go back in history, the city council were the town elders, right? The city council before we had like a specific structure and called the Constitution, whatever, right?
Right.
Like the town elders were the people that gave guidance to the ones that weren't paying attention to the energy crisis or the water crisis or, you know, all these other things, right? Because my job as a citizen was to, you know, serve my family and take care of my neighbor. And the role of government and the role of those elders is to say, hey, I'm going to watch over the flock and make sure I'm, looking out past the borders and looking down the timeline to say, hey, we should probably be thinking about this thing because nobody else is thinking about this thing, right? Right. And so that's where I hear you say that. You're like, why would I do this to myself again? But as time goes forward, you know, I think you're going to learn some efficiencies in the system too. Hopefully we can cut some efficiencies into the system, right? Because it should not be a full-time job. Right. That's not what the government should not be in charge of that much stuff.
Right. Well, and a lot of it comes down to, because I have a lot of people who are, you know, thinking about getting involved or, you know, running for office, and they'll ask, okay, how much time
You have a lot of people. Give me 3
expect?
names of people that I need to know are going to run this year.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that.
You can't divulge
that yet.
You're going to come out. You're going to come out after June. So I don't even think it'll be posted before June.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you want to cut it out, I do want to know who do you think is going to run? Well, who would you guess if you were to throw money and guess maybe a couple of people might run? Who would you think would run?
So this isn't coming out until after.
So this would
because I don't want to be out of
weeks.
Line if they decide not to.
I'll count it out.
But I'll say I get a lot of buzz, right, of people who are interested in running, and they ask me how much time does it take. And I think it really honestly depends on the person. And I'm one who likes to do a lot of research. And if I'm being expected to vote on something, I want to know about it. I'm not just going to trust that city staff did the homework and I'm going to rubber stamp it.
True.
So, of course, that would save me time if I wasn't doing constant research on things that have already gone through city staff.
Right.
But I'm not a very trusting person. I'm not saying
and that is an important job. So you think that's the big bulk of your...
That's a lot of it. But I was just telling the mayor and the city manager the other day, I said, it is a full-time job keeping this woke bullshit out of this town. I'm telling you, I get calls every single day now from residents about different things that are coming in, different things that are happening. And it's just a and I think have become the person that those concerns get funneled to because I am pretty vocal about my stance on some of those things. And so that it's time consuming too, just working on how do we safeguard this community? How do we, working with legislators, whether it be at the local or the state level, even I've worked with quite a bit over these last few months.
What was the last one you heard? What was the last one you're like, somebody called you and said, this thing is happening. Can you believe it? What was the last one?
So recently has been the 4th of July, which actually the city did not bring in Kelsey Ballerini. Okay. The singer. Do you know much about her?
Nope.
So that's who... Through some research, I found out even though it's the city puts on the fireworks, the main entertainment is actually brought in from Canyon Media. So they are who chose her and paid her. Because I wanted to make sure there's no tax dollars funding her because that's my thing. It's like, okay, if it's a private deal being paid for privately, that's one thing. Right. But I don't want my tax dollars paying for some of this. But she is essentially a pretty woke country singer. She's most famous recently for her gun control advocacy, anti-gun rights, anti-Second Amendment, as well as bringing drag queens onto the stage in Tennessee after their bill that they passed wanting adult entertainment away from children and out of public spaces. She brought drag queens on the stage at the CMT Awards. So that's kind of her famous things recently. And so I did get several calls about that.
We are not going to support her in town, but we get a choice too, whether we support her or not, right?
I mean, you get a choice whether you pay for that ticket or not when you go down there.
So Canyon, how did you stop it? So like, how does this process go?
I can't stop it because it's not the city of, it wasn't something that was my approval or anything like that.
So then was there like a group of people that went to him and said, hey, we don't want her to perform?
I don't know. I mean, I've just been telling the people who have complained to me, I said, it wasn't us who made the decision. Through research, it looks like it's Canyon Media. So feel free to let them know your concerns and don't buy a ticket. Don't support it. Right. I mean, that's my thing. I'm not going to buy a ticket. I'm not going to go support it. And hopefully that their contract, I know usually those contracts are pretty airtight of you can only do this on stage. You can't bring these performers on stage. So I hope that they have a contract that it's family friendly, which I assume that they would, considering it's a 4th of July family event. But hey, in this day and age, nothing surprises me, unfortunately.
I see crazy stuff every day.
Yeah.
And the internet makes it worse.
Yeah.
I see so many crazy things, like people shooting each other. And I'm like, how did I even see that? How is that even a thing that I had to look at and watch? And then I was like, why did they kill this guy? Right. And then you like start thinking like, what is wrong with us?
Yeah.
Right.
But it is. Well, and social media, I think, is a big component of that. It's such a toxic environment. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on there because I feel like I have to be on there in order to get any messaging out or in order to, communicate in certain ways to have the reach, right?
Right.
But then there's definitely that toxic component, like you were mentioning earlier, where, people can hide behind a keyboard and a lot of people are going to say things that they can type in their mom's basement that they would never say to your face. Or, if we can sit down and have a face-to-face. And that's what I try to do when people reach out and they're angry or they're mad. I just say, let's go to lunch. Let's go sit down together. Let's have a conversation. And the ones that are willing that I do that with, 9 times out of 10, we walk away with a cordial mutual understanding, even if we don't agree, even if we're on vast different sides of the spectrum, we can still love one another, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to agree on everything to be respectful.
Right.
But then there are definitely a good chunk that also will never take me up on that offer and say, I want absolutely nothing to do with you. They have their ideas of me and that's it. They're not going to even open up an actual dialogue.
Yeah. I think I hear that from almost across the board, right? As soon as you get a large enough group of people, the pool just has to get to a certain number, and then all of a sudden you have people that hate you for no reason. And you're like, I'm just telling you how I feel about something. This is just my opinion on it. And truthfully, for me, I think we blew out the drag thing got blown out of proportion. Yeah. I think we all kind of lost our minds, and then it triggered a button. And then they were like, ooh, that worked. That got them all excited.
It was the media, honestly. Yeah. The media is what caused so much of that drama that didn't need to be there.
I watched people that I know act in a way that they probably wouldn't normally have acted hadn't, one thing led to another and they saw it somewhere, right? But then it's even us talking about it right now, right? Right this second, we're perpetuating this moment in time where it seems like we've lost our mind a little bit. We've left what used to be a law or a rule. COVID dumped and shattered it on the ground for everybody. And we wait a minute, what are the rules? There's one rule. Put your shirt back on. There's a commercial. Is it like a Subway commercial? He's like, there are no rules. And he's like, taking off his shirt. He's like, put your shirt back on. It's like, there's one rule. We've forgotten all these rules. And so I think we're all trying to put them all back together, right? I think we just... Now's the time where we all need to just be like, hey, let's all get along again. Robin Williams dressed up as a woman one time and we all laughed. What the heck, right?
And that comparison, though, it's there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody cares about Mrs. Doubtfire.
I bet you there's probably less than 5,000, less than 5,000 of these drag queens running around making money off of being able to go on stage. There's probably less than 5,000.
Right.
And they've been promoted for it. And so they're like, this is a gravy train I'm going to ride.
Yeah.
And they're going to ride it as long as they want. But we have segments of our population that are kind of weird.
Yeah.
That's just, humans are weird.
Right. And I will say, though, because I did initially have the mindset of, okay, if we just like keep this under the radar, like don't talk about this, they're just doing it for the attention, right? This crap will go away. They'll stop, trying to do this in front of kids. But over the last year now, I've had the realization that it's not going away. Yeah. It's here. They're going to keep pushing the boundaries. There is a noted, concerted effort to put adult entertainment in front of children. This is nationwide too. This is not, I've heard people say, oh, that's not a local problem. That's only happening in like 1 or 2 places. No, this is happening literally across the nation and across Utah.
Yeah.
So I do get passionate when it comes to kids. I mean, that's what got me into this even political position in the first place, is when they mandated masks on kids. Mm-hmm. That's where I have to draw the line. When you start coming after kids, let them grow up. Let them be kids. Stop pushing this crap on them. And so I do get pretty fired up once you start. And I think most parents do when you start bringing the kids into it. Nobody cared about these drag queens that have been around for decades until they started trying to do this in front of kids.
That's what and I think that's my point, right? Is that like, as much as this feels like, now there's a lot of people are concerned with a social contagion, especially with kids being confused about what their genetic disposition is for your gender, right? Sex versus gender, this whole argument. It just gets the water gets all like muddied up together.
Right.
And you'd use the term woke, which to me drives me nuts, because we've turned a thing that had a name before into a euphemism. And then we're like, wait, I knew what that word meant, but what does this word mean? And then we apply it to a bunch of things that potentially is that woke? Or like being anti-gun, that's not necessarily woke. Mm-hmm. But the LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ, the alphabet thing,
right?
That to me is a lot of the woke stuff.
Well, and to me, it's like this falsified social justice that really doesn't exist, or like this and that's why I say it in regards to the gun. That's the only reason I say it, is because it's this notion of, oh, if we just take away all the guns, it's going to solve all of our issues. Like, no, that's fabricated. That's not real life. You don't just take, like, the bad guys are still going to get guns.
It's very nuanced. And to take the guns away from the people that are the good ones is the worst strategy. It does not make any sense.
Exactly.
We're already in the system. It doesn't change anything by just taking the guns away, right? And truthfully, you're asking for a big ask, right? You're asking for a lot of police officers to do something that they are not, at this moment, culturally going to do.
Right.
But there might be a time, right? Given enough time down the road and nobody to say anything, right? And stand up for, what you believe in, which is what I think you do. And having the conversation is not going away. When it's not going away, we do have to continue to have maybe a voice of reason at a certain capacity.
I have to tell you, too, the thing you said a minute ago made me think about it. So one of the other recent calls that I've had is a nursing student here at the local university informed me that, and actually I did my undergrad, my RN, through Dixie State University. So I have very close ties to the university here.
I have no close ties to anybody in Southern Utah. So
I
have no close ties. You have all the ties. I was like, I don't have any ties.
Hey, well,
I don't know if it's an advantage.
In some ways that's nice. So, but this nursing student now at Utah Tech, is its new name now, as we know.
Right. Another euphemism.
They have informed me that, nursing, it's a science, right? I mean, that's the profession. Yet, according to the student, which I actually have a meeting next week with the dean of nursing to talk more about this issue, but they have a class over there that's required now called contemporary nursing, where in their labor and delivery rotation, this nurse was told that she should not refer to the mother giving birth with she, her pronouns until she knows that that's how the mother identifies. So you're going to tell me in a profession of science, we aren't going to talk about biology or science. The fact that it's a mother giving birth is not a she, her until we can confirm that. Are you kidding me? That was one of the things.
That's at the school.
That's at this local university. Again, I'm meeting with them to confirm all of this, but this is what.
I really hope this is not true.
Student
the fact
told
that she's sitting down with me.
And also the fact that in this course, she basically, white students were made out to be inherently racist. They, had these scenarios of, okay, you're in an alley and you see two black men in the alley. What's your initial response? Oh, because if you're scared, that means you're racist.
It only would happen in an alley.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't care what color their skin is.
I don't remember last time I was in an alley. Ma'am, could you please update the questionnaire?
But just this, again, we can come back to that woke word of like this fabricated social injustice that we're all, if we have lighter skin, we are just inherently racist. And so those are some things I'm going to be confirming with the university, because I will tell you their provost over there is perpetuating a very toxic, woke, leftist narrative throughout this community that I am very unhappy about. I don't know if you saw his convocation speech this last year, but
missed it.
He talked about how we need to become a collective for social justice.
How many people were in this crowd listening to this?
So it was addressed to all of the professors at the university.
Okay.
So, and I watched it on YouTube afterward, but he talked about how they need to implement the 17 United Nations initiatives, not only in their classrooms, but throughout the community.
Oh, Jeff, I wish you could pull this up.
Oh, pull it up. It's there. Michael LaCourse. He's the provost convocation speech this last fall. Utah Tech.
So the UN Accords. So he quoted the UN.
They quoted the UN.
Because this is at a meeting to do what now?
This is his convocation speech. I mean,
explain that. I legitimately have no idea what a convocation is.
It's literally just like the opening of the school year speech to the instructors of like hey, let's not talk about the importance of secondary education or higher education or all of the principles that make this, community thrive.
He pledged a loyalty to the United Nations, is what he said. And I think Russia's chair of the Security Council at the current moment too, right? By the way, I think that's correct. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you find it?
So that's the crap that's being perpetuated with our tax dollars
we're pulling it up right now.
Throughout the community right now.
Yeah.
And I take big issue with that.
Yeah. Well, tax dollars and public education. Can we go there? How about we transition this to a little bit of the, because truthfully, I don't think tax dollars should be going to public education at some levels.
Yeah.
At some levels. I do think that...
And certainly not federal. We need to distance ourselves from this federal funding, because they will put, it's strings attached, right? They will push, that's the big issue in our schools right now, is all of this curriculum that's attached to these federal dollars.
Right. So these strings that you have to, it's like pork barrel politics, right? You add this string to it that doesn't really impact the greater, mission, but it's a string attached to it, and it's always $1, and the federal budget just keeps ballooning up.
Right. Which is print more money. It has nothing to do with inflation.
Which is interesting, because the Fed is separate from the government.
Right.
So we make a statement, and we say these things because they're colloquial. Right? We say them like we said the government's going to print more money. The government doesn't actually print the more money. Yeah. It's not the government.
Yeah, you're right.
And they're not even printing money. They're just adding other columns to the ledgers. They're just adding more columns to the ledger. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's up here. How long is his portion of the speech? There's no way it's 2 hours.
No, I feel like his is like 20 minutes or so. And yeah, he has a slide somewhere about social justice. So I guess if you, find the spot where he has the slide about social justice.
So, and he's required to say it. He was required to say it. Let's not, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that they said, listen, you're the boss. You're going to have to say this. And he had to make a decision.
I don't know. I get
the
feeling.
You got fired from your job
for making a decision. I get the feeling that might be what he truly believes. I actually reached out to him immediately and tried to meet with him in person, because I do believe that having face-to-face, like I wanted to sit down with him and understand where he was coming from rather than just blast him.
Yeah.
He wouldn't. He refused.
I got lunch with a random Facebook. Didn't know, never had met him.
Yeah.
And he immediately started arguing with me about water on Facebook. And so I asked him to lunch, and we went to Firehouse Subs, and we talked about it. Him and his wife.
Awesome.
And we sat there, and it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
And then he invited me to go play golf later.
That's awesome.
But
See, that's how it should be.
we started with arguing about water, right? It's just funny.
Yeah.
Like how far we slippery slope down. But if he won't sit down with you, then he doesn't have anything else to say. right? So
That's what I mean. So I do. I mean, I bring it up because I do see it as a huge issue, and I wanted to, and I still am happy to meet face to face with them and talk about it.
right.
Maybe if I'm misunderstood, I want to know why or how,
And that's probably why you had some of the biggest voter turnout, is because of kind of how you've just carried yourself from day one.
Right.
I went to the debate when you were there,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
You got a bunch of, claps and well dones.
Yeah.
And you sounded very passionate about what you believe in. And that's kind of hard for a lot of people to do.
Right.
But, everybody agreed with you.
Well, and I think that's the important thing, regardless of really what it is in life, but in politics, like that's what I look for when I'm voting for someone is I want to see that they are genuine, they are passionate, they are going to be upfront, because I honestly didn't want people voting for me that didn't agree with the direction that I was going or, my ideology or, my philosophy on the proper role of government, right? So I tried to be very upfront when I spoke to people, when I put things out there. I didn't want to play this game of politics of like, oh, I'm going to say this around this person, but around this person, I'm going to cater to this. I didn't want to play that game. I wanted to just, and I still am to this day.
I don't even know how to play that
I
game.
am who I am.
I forget what I
Take
say
it or
30
leave
seconds
it.
after I
Right.
said it. I was like, I don't know what I said.
Exactly.
Right
Yeah, that's why when you
now. It's
mentioned
like recording it is kind of scary. You're like, I was fact checking my last one. I was like, oh my gosh. I said
Right.
Asheville, North Carolina. I'm like, that's not, it's South Carolina.
Yeah.
But yeah, so trying to think about being
Right.
one way versus
Like,
another,
just be
like that's
who
not a
you
skill
are.
set that
yeah. And if you
I,
support me, great. If you don't, okay. Like,
yeah, no big deal.
Not big deal.
So to that point though, I think there's a younger population of voters that is silent in Southern Utah. I
Yeah.
think there's a younger portion that might have some, there's probably some gray area between you and them.
right.
What would you say to those that might not necessarily, is there a bridge to be made at a certain level with like the younger generation? Because I think a lot of that kind of is more of the retiree mindset,
Right.
majority in the community.
Yeah.
Would you agree, or maybe I'm off?
Yeah, no, I think you're right as far as it does tend to be the more retiree crowd because they have more time. Like conservatives in general, and, not to say that some liberals too, but we tend to be like, we're out there working freaking hard. We're running businesses. We are taking care of our kids. We, a lot of us just, it comes down to time, right? Like, I can't prioritize going and sitting at a city council meeting. Like, I got stuff to do, right? And, but we can no longer sit by and do that in this country. Like, we're not going to have a country left. We're not going to have a business left. Our kids certainly aren't if we don't stand up and start doing something about it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I feel like actually 2020 and COVID was some silver lining in that was it did wake up some people like me who are passionate and others like me to realize like, whoa, this is what government's capable of doing overnight if we're not involved. And local level is actually so important. And that's I realized through COVID is how vital it is to have local representation that's willing to recognize, okay, what's the proper role of government and safeguard this community because we do live, I feel like, in a very special place.
Yeah.
And I intend to keep it that way. And we do need our young people to keep waking up and stepping up and showing up to meetings. And, everyone's calling probably isn't to run for office, but some people it is.
What do you think about, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, is that Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Yeah.
She was talking about secession and like just fully cut off the federal government.
Right.
States go back to their own powers.
Well, I think that comes back to rereading the Federalist Papers and the whole argument for the Constitution in the first place. Me too.
I got it on all that.
Yep. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And that's what it comes down to is the argument for the strength. Like, why did we become a nation in the first place, right? Like, we need the strength that we have when we're united. So no, even though I have seen people refer to me online a lot as Marjorie Taylor Tanner.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. It's been my nickname I've seen buzzed around online by my non-supporters. So even though I certainly side with her on a lot of things, I don't think that division is what we want. I think we want to unite as much as we can. And it comes back to those basic fundamentals of why we did it in the first place as a nation.
Yeah. I had a moment where I was like, maybe she's on to something. Because you kind of dig into that topic and be like, okay, what does secession really mean?
Yeah.
What does that no longer mean for the community?
Right.
Like truly like cutting off what that arm looks like.
Yeah. And I do think we cut it off as much as we can in terms of like the handouts and like all this COVID federal money. Like why did Utah need more COVID money than any other state? Like to me, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Well, because it was money.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter.
Oh, I know.
And we're the best at collecting
Right.
all the money.
Right.
So we got the most money.
Right.
So we won. All the other states lost.
Yes.
Right. So,
Yes.
which is the job of the, it's hard to say it out loud because you're like, the job of our representatives is to bring pork back to the state. Your job is to go to Washington, D.C. and argue on our behalf for money, for things that are going on, right? So we happen to probably have a really good crew that went up there and got us a little bit more money than other states might have. But does that make that right?
Right. And
because they're in this situation because we started the thing to begin with.
Yep.
So they did a really good job, but then people don't want to kick their own, right? I think the survey is like, how much do you trust elected officials, right? And if they're talking about somebody else's elected official, they're like, no, that one's an idiot.
Right.
So it was like no trust in the elected officials, but their trust in their local official is through the roof.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. How do those two things match up?
That is interesting. And what we do forget about a lot of times in states that I wish more of our representatives, especially at the state and federal level, the 10th Amendment. Like, we can make our own decisions as a state.
Yeah.
And, without the federal government doesn't have the right to come in and make all of these decisions for us like they are.
Yeah.
But it's because we don't oftentimes have people at the state level who are willing to enforce that 10th Amendment of like, no, you guys aren't going to, that was my whole argument with the vaccine mandate. And ultimately it did get fought off because of that, because of the 10th Amendment. But there's, in my opinion, it's way underutilized and underlooked at.
Yeah. We've given the executive branch already way too much power. So like where Marjorie Taylor Greene, she does a good job at, driving home an extreme point, right? So she's taking it to the extreme, but Trump does the same thing, right? He takes a small nugget and he takes a mile,
right?
Which is part of how he's such a good negotiator, right? But at the same time, what arms do we start cutting off? And the executive branch seems like it's a little bit stronger than it really should be, and the powers need to go back to Congress. It needs to go back to the local level, and then we have to demand something higher of our local congressional leaders.
Right.
Bottom line.
Yeah. And these 3-letter agencies, they need to go away. They're not constitutional. They shouldn't be making laws for us. Congress needs to take their power back.
Goes back to the alphabet.
The CDC, the CIA, all these 3-letter, you name it. We could get rid of a lot of them. Just saying.
Absolutely. We could get rid of aspects of a lot of them.
Yes.
And we tend to do that, right? As we like have some things that there's good parts of it.
Right.
And then you have to, they grow into these abominations, right? They started wholesome and good, and then humans do what humans do, and then they destroy it.
Yep.
And I think Thomas Jefferson said the tree of liberty has to be, does he say fertilized? No, I think he says watered with the blood of patriots. I think he says watered. But yeah, the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of patriots because you have to believe in something so much you will be willing to die for it. And so
it's like JFK. That's what got JFK killed, right?
Pretty much, right? It's pretty much it. You're right.
Put on the tinfoil hat.
Right. Yeah.
Well, wait, didn't you tell me that the guy, a Marine in the back in his caravan, like the car pulled forward after the shot, and then he pulled the trigger, and they think that it was like a Marine who shot him in the back of the head?
There's so many theories.
Isn't that the theory you told me?
A lot of theories.
Did you tell me that theory, or is that somebody else?
I think it was somebody telling us that theory.
Oh, yeah. I was like, that was the weirdest theory I've heard. I'm like, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's hard to know what to believe anymore.
Somebody shot him to start. At least they tried. Yeah, somebody at least attempted. So, there's so many things, in that podcast, I think, going back to it. What's one thing that you're really proud of, though, since you've been city council member?
Yeah, that's a great question.
City councilwoman.
So I think one of the big things that I realized pretty early on, because politics, obviously not my background. So I tried to really go into this with, all right, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to listen. God gave me 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, right? I'm going to just soak this in, try to figure out what's what. And it didn't take very long, though, of sitting on the council to realize it is not the elected officials that are running this city. It's the unelected bureaucrats. And through that kind of realization, it just made me realize how important it is that we the people, right, are the ones who should be running the government. And we do that through our local elected officials who we elect to represent us.
Right.
And the legislative body, like we really, as the legislative body of the city, should be making sure that we are holding that power, right? And not just passing it off to unelected bureaucrats. And not to say that there's not amazing unelected bureaucrats that work, I'm not trying to
right?
badmouth anyone who works for the
public
city.
Administrative.
Right. I think that there's amazing people and, people who I work with right now who are absolutely phenomenal. But we have to make sure that, and we have to make sure, though, that we are staying all within the lane that we should be.
Yeah.
And so I did bring that to light. I think bringing that to light a lot through the budget process last year. They, as you recall, probably tried to raise taxes last year. And the marketing pitch that they put out for that was Safe St. George. In order to be safe and properly fund our public safety, we have to raise your taxes. We just can't afford to pay our public safety what we can unless we raise your taxes. And my red flags and my antennas are going up right away. Like, why am I sitting in a sales pitch meeting right now? Like being told as an elected official that that's what I have to do. Like, how about we comb through the budget? And you can't tell me in a $500 million budget for 95,000 people.
Hold on a minute. Don't go too far. You're saying $500 million is the budget.
Oh, it was over 500 million.
505 million.
505 million. And that includes county stuff though too, right?
No.
Like water treatment?
No, that's St. George City only. That's
St.
not
George
county.
City. Okay.
Yeah. So St. George City only,
So-
about 95,000 people.
What's the biggest line item in that?
So biggest things are capital expenditures. So big projects like the new city hall that's going to be built.
Oh, I'm sorry. You should bleep that out. The new bleep.
Right.
You should probably bleep out the new city hall that they're spending money on. That was a big one. How much is that one?
Right. That one. I should have brought the last year's budget to have right in front of me, but I feel like it's no. That was the entire budget. I think it's like 80 million or somewhere in that.
Well, I'm
range.
still flabbergasted. I thought it was 300. Truthfully, guys, I didn't even look it up. I wanted to come into this not knowing about
and
the
this
budget.
is last year's. We haven't seen this year's yet. This year's is going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So I'm talking last
the budget
year.
for 2023 has not been settled?
This
24.
was 2023, 2024 has not been settled.
Got
so
it.
this is 2022, 2023 that I'm talking now.
Got it.
And so you compare that to Provo, who actually has higher population. They have very similar amenities because the story you're going to hear from people advocating for increase in taxes are, but St. George is unique because we have an airport, we have a water treatment plant. We have to have a bigger budget. Well, Provo has those things too. They have more population and they were almost $200 million less than our budget.
Michelle,
Who said
you
what?
can maybe
Mallory's like, what?
So I was chatting with a couple of different people. One of them had worked in as a city staffer, and he had mentioned that part of the reason behind that is because cities like Provo, Pleasant Grove, American Fork, cities like that can collaborate on fire truck purchases and police car purchases, and they can share in their water treatment plant facility
Because the metro-
and stuff like that. Because you've got the cities that are right next to each other,
Are
and
beefy.
we don't have that, and so we've got to spend our own money to do that. Can you talk about that at all, or is that true, or is that false? What are your thoughts
So
on that?
I know that we have the same purchasing agreements. I mean, if you're purchasing government entity like fire trucks and police cars, I'm told anyway when I've asked about that, like, hey, is there some type of a bulk deal, right? Like, can we combine this? And I'm told that we already do that. That's the feedback I've had from city staff is, yes, we already do that.
Maybe because those cities, the adjoining cities, when you look at the budgets of everybody else,
Right.
like what's Washington's budget? Do you have any idea?
I can't remember what Washington's was
Jeff, maybe you could
last
pull
year,
that
but
up.
their,
I'm curious, like, the
their
different cities alone.
population is a lot smaller than ours too.
Right.
And I'm not trying to say that a lot of the things in the budget aren't justified, but what I am trying to say,
$80 million for a new
is that
city
it
hall is not
comes-
acceptable. We should probably not do that, everybody.
what I'm trying to
that's what I
say
think.
is we have to prioritize. If you're going to come out and I'm going to say, I have to raise your taxes as your representative in order to properly fund public safety, I feel the obligation and responsibility that I have better have combed through every single line item and made sure every single dollar that's being spent is justified, because it comes back to that proper role of government, right? To protect and provide, or not provide, but protect life, liberty, property of the citizens.
Right.
So if I'm going to come and take money out of your pocket, it better be for one of those reasons. And public safety is like the top on the list, right?
Yeah,
like
I'm
they're
pretty
the
sure
ones
that's-
out there protecting our life, liberty, and property.
We need food, water, shelter,
Right.
protection. I think that's it.
Yes.
I don't think we need anything else.
Right. Exactly.
Washington City budget, according to WashingtonCity.org, $120 million.
120. So a fifth. So my point is that there potentially is some, I bet you there's some sharing in equipment, and so your overall budget isn't as big, but we're talking $300 million difference between Provo and St. George. Is that right?
It wasn't 300. I think it was just the last numbers
Provost's
I had
budget
looked at. It
$300
was
million.
Oh, so then it was over 200 million.
So
yeah,
over
I was going to
200
say the
million.
last I looked, it was like 180 million. So yeah, we're 200 million then.
So then, looking at those line item budget, pieces and saying, okay, is this worth it?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong about the city hall. Maybe I have no idea the inner workings and like the sessions, and we need more offices to do these other
I
things.
think we do need a new city hall, as far as we certainly need more space. I mean, right now, if you tour through city hall, like there's people with offices and closets.
I have an office closet.
Like it's pretty, people on top of each other. So I get, and even our city council meetings, when we do have those meetings that
Yeah.
people show up, not everyone can fit in there. So I do think
design.
like if we can,
Not everybody should be allowed in city council meetings.
if
Okay?
yeah, depending on
Ma'am, you are not the elected officials are not having transsexuals running around the streets. There's no plot against the city, right? She comes up there.
Michelle, you remember the lady that
rumor?
stood up in the not the last city council, but I think it was the one before, and she said, "I heard a rumor that there's a
I
city
did hear
council
that
person
rumor.
and the mayor collaborating to make St. George the drag queen hub."
I
did
think
hear
I
that
think she
rumor.
said Danielle Larkin,
She did.
right?
She
I
said
think she
Dan-
said
and
Larkin's
Danielle.
name.
She did.
Yep,
She said
Danielle and the
Danielle
mayor.
Oh
Yeah, it
my
was hilarious.
gosh.
It was
It's hilarious. It's hilarious, but ma'am, please don't show up to the
That
city
quote
council again.
actually got quoted
Picked up.
in the Salt Lake Tribune too. It kind of made me.
You want to know what? That's a plant. Jeff and I have a theory. Maybe there's plants out there that they're like, "Hey, I'll pay you $50 to go say this thing at city council." I don't know. Like stuff like that, though, that's not productive. It's not productive dialogue in a city council. So maybe
is
the
funny,
chamber
though.
should be
It's
small.
funny.
Do you really want 200,000 people
But
in
so
there?
my counter to that though, because there are, if you talk to probably most elected officials, they will totally agree with you. But I am passionate that I do feel like I want people to have easy access to us. Like I want people to feel like their voices can be heard.
Fair enough.
I don't agree with probably a
but
vast
is the
majority
city
of the
council meeting
comments
the
that are
time
made.
that should be done?
But yeah, and I can see certainly the argument on both sides, but them being able to come and give public comment, it puts it on an official public record. I think from the perception of the community, like I'm just thinking myself as a citizen, if I had a major issue, I mean, yes, I can email or call and those things, which are important too, but there is something to be said to being able to like
record it,
get it on public record that I brought this issue
and I believe this
to
thing.
the council,
Right.
and maybe it resonates with others that wouldn't have heard it otherwise through a private email or a phone call, right?
Right.
So I tend to side with like I want the community to be able to have that voice, even if it ends up being some days a total waste of time. Even when like 90% of the people getting up there are comments directed at me that they hate me and whatever, that's not productive. Like, that's fine. You got that right to do that. Make your voice heard.
So currently on the budget, outside of the city hall, because clearly you think we should get a new city hall, which I think is a good conversation.
But
later.
I will say with that though, I have made very clear in the meetings on city hall that I have tried my best to make sure we're not doing all these extras, because I will tell you there's other people like, oh, we need to have a coffee shop. I'm like, what? We don't need to have a coffee shop.
I already listen. This would be the only way I would concede and lay down my sword for the city, is if they bought it from a private entity and they leased it from the private entity, and a private business that's selected anonymously if need be, right? That there's bids for it to be purchased and have the public property stop growing. We don't need to own any more real estate as the city of St. George.
Thank you.
So if their city hall is owned by a private organization,
Yes.
then you could go to a bunch of private individuals and be like, hey, what do you think would be a good business strategy to put in a greater city hall mall, right? Where it's like not just city hall, it's city hall and a bunch of other businesses that facilitate the public professionals that want to be there and are going to have lunch around that area. Maybe they want coffee. We have creamsicles and sodas and all kinds of stuff.
And
so
then maybe the city hall would be profitable and could
and
send
then it'd be,
some of that money back to us.
Exactly. And the idea, though, that the public, government is going to run the ownership and landlord of that property.
Yeah.
They're not going to do as good of a job as a private.
Jobs. Talk about creating jobs.
Creating jobs, like the whole thing. So that's where I'm like, okay, if you want a new city hall, then you got to sell the land. Stop owning land because there's squares. Somebody told me that the city owns land right now and they wanted to make it as part of the community trust for affordable housing. St. George told them we don't have any property to give to a community land trust.
What about that square on Tonnequint that the city owns?
I know of hundreds of
I would like
parts
to know about, because I haven't heard that conversation.
Perfect.
But the city owns way too much.
Good to know.
Absolutely.
They own too much.
I am 100% against city competing with the private sector. Like, we should not be involving ourselves in private businesses. I get a lot of flack because I don't think we should, even in golf, I get a lot of pushback for that, which I get it. They've been purchased. They're there.
Wait a minute.
The city of St. George owns 4 golf courses.
What's the profit and loss statement on that? Do you know that off the top of your head?
So when I first got in, I looked over the previous 5 years.
The segue is so, I'm excited. I'm so excited.
And there's not, like, it very bit, because they will try to feed you the narrative of, oh, golf is so profitable. When I looked back over the last 5 years, if I wanted to be like generous, I would say we broke even, because the prior years before that, I mean, it was in the hole. And then we had, through COVID, some good years that, kind of put us ahead a little bit. I mean, I'm talking like $50,000.
Oh my gosh. Not even, she couldn't even quote a profit margin as a percentage. It was so small, it was in the dollars.
Right. And so, that's where I get a lot of pushback. I'm not saying golf isn't great. Golf is great. I get it. The economic impact, I get it. But at the end of the day, we are still competing with the private sector.
If it's not making any money, it's not contributing to the economic development.
Yeah, we're with you on that. But they will argue, though, the secondary of people come to this area to golf and they stay in our hotels and they eat at our restaurants because it's a golf destination.
That's a subsidized
Amen.
tourism feature.
Amen.
That Black Desert is crushing and doing a better job out anyway.
Amen. Think of all the and that's my argument as well, is like, look at all these private courses, and there's companies who specialize in coming in and taking over. Private companies.
They own 4. You're telling me they have 4. So there's the Red Hills.
Yep. There's St. George. Sunbrook.
Southgate.
Sunbrook. Oh my gosh, I didn't know Sunbrook was owned by the city. And Southgate.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask.
That's the biggest
how much
pushback
water,
I get.
How much water does each one use a year? Do you know in the acre feet?
So I don't know the exact, but they did recently change within the last couple of years to secondary irrigation.
I don't care.
But
how much water are they using? I really want to know this.
Yeah. And
how could I find out how much water
this is the other thing.
Public golf courses?
Yeah, we can find out. But guess the other thing with the water on that, because this is another thing that bothers me about those profit loss statements, is they don't calculate the cost of water, because the cost of water is being paid for by us in our utility bills.
Ladies and gentlemen, if that's not enough for you to go to the city council meeting next time, I don't know what else is.
It makes me want to go to Sunbrook and just walk in and start playing golf.
For free.
Yeah.
For free, because I'm already paying for it.
So when I talk about this, though, I get a lot of upset residents because we're gonna get hate mail. Because they say, yeah, but I can golf so much cheaper. And if you sell that to a private, they're going to jack up the price. And then I'm not going to be able to afford to golf anymore. And, you get that. But it's like, but when you go back to
don't have to
go back to the basics.
Listen, though. But this is the crazy thing, is they're going from, we own 4 to, okay, could we just own 1
Amen.
and do 1 really good?
I know.
And then just say, if you don't live here, you can't play on this course.
Yeah.
So one of the
I don't
proposals-
understand.
Michelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the proposals that I
gosh,
think
I'm
went
yelling.
over well was increasing the cost of golf for non-St. George City
Yes,
residents.
and so that's what
but-
they've done right now is they increased.
I don't want your money.
non-resident
I want my
fees,
water.
But
I don't want their money. I
Yeah.
want water.
Yeah, and so the argument to that right there is, yeah, but if you sell it, they're just going to take away all of that green open space and make track homes, and
We don't have to do track homes. We already have 4 parks. We have 4 natural preserved parks that we could give back to nature. And for a couple of them, oh my gosh. Can you imagine an electric bike park? An electric bike park. You replace all the grass with just rocks. You could do rocks, and we could just take crappy soil that we dig out of the ground and that we go put in another place,
right.
and then truck in other dirt to make houses for. How about we just take that dirt and maybe, use it a little bit along the way and create electric bike parks, and then you could go kind of do like a go-kart track for electric bikes. You could do a race.
There
You could
you
do
go.
races
as
on
long
that
as
property.
it's the private sector doing it. Go ahead.
And it's a silent. No one will hear. It's not like the freaking motorcycles. You could do an electric bike park in one of those, and I bet you'd be profitable.
Yeah.
I bet you could do a tournament
Probably.
and electric. Just like the Snake Hollow, right? Like they have the BMX park out there. You just do one now. It's bigger because you have all this extra land. Doesn't mean you have to turn it into houses.
Yeah. No, I know. And the city can sell it with a stipulation of
You can't turn
it
it
has
into
to be
houses.
this, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's different options. And so that's been something I've also been passionate about. Why don't we explore these options? But I get shut down. I mean, it's just not going to happen until we get a new council. I mean, just to be blunt.
So November 7th.
Yeah, exactly.
November 7th, 3 city council seats
There's
are open.
3 open.
Okay. And do you know anyone who is currently already said that they're running?
So I'm trying to think if any of them have 100% said. So I hesitate to say names because I just don't know if you get a lot of buzz before, but then who actually is going to show up and put their application in?
Yeah. June 1st through the 7th. You got to
Yes.
show up and put your application in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll be passed. So by the time this airs, it'll be past the 7th of June because it'll probably be June 20th. This'll air. So happy Father's Day to your husband.
Oh, yeah. Happy Father's Day to you guys.
I got 3 little boys, so
Awesome.
it'll be fun. Hopefully I get socks. It's tomorrow. Hopefully I get socks. Danielle Larkin had already told me that she was going to run.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
I've
know
heard
she's
that
running.
the 3 incumbents are planning on running is my general
So
understanding.
Greg MacArthur probably will run.
Mhm.
And then what's the other seat?
Jimmy Hughes.
Jimmy Hughes. Okay.
Yep.
So
and then I've heard buzz
you
of
and Natalie are over here
several
like,
others.
hey, have
I
fun.
know. Natalie and I are, I'm glad to not be campaigning for sure.
Campaigning
not
is
that
no-
campaign, it's not that I really did anything different. Like
It's just
I am
this
who I
feeling-
am, but you do have to, you
It's
know,
this
you have
unease-
to show up to events. And not that I don't show up to events anyway, but
And then you also have to say, hey, I still have a platform.
yeah.
I still have this. I'm still doing these things for the constituents, right?
Right.
Like it's a similar. Truthfully, I don't think you should be you should be barred from giving your endorsement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you give somebody an endorsement?
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would be, and that's why I'm hesitating what names to say, because I don't know 100% if they're going to actually show up and put in the application, even though they've expressed interest. But also, out of respect, I want to make sure that they want me to give my public endorsement, because depending on the voter, that could help or hurt them. Because
See, but now we're playing the game though. Now we're playing the game of I'm gonna show up one way one day and another way another day, right?
But it's out of respect for them.
True.
I have no issue
I
saying,
can speculate on people all the time. Jeff Watkins, I think you should run for city council.
do it.
I think you should run, bro.
This is my public announcement that I will 100% not be running for city council.
Well, I hope that
So let's speculate
there's-
for me. Speculate because it's going to be past it. So whether they did or not, just say, okay, I hope, because this will not be aired until then. Say, I hope this person runs.
Do you know Paula Smith?
Paula Smith, realtor. Yep,
Yeah.
I do.
hope
I know
she
of
runs.
her.
I like Paula.
I like Paula.
Yeah. So she's one I've heard. Some of the other names I don't know even well
I have no
enough.
idea Paula's politics. So if you're
From conversations I've had with her, I like her politics.
Mhm.
I think she would be great.
okay,
Yeah. Eros. Do you know Eros?
Eros? Nope. Jeff, do you know Eros?
I do not, other than Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he would be good.
Okay.
I've heard Greg Aldred is running again. I can say his name because everybody knows Greg. Do you know Greg Aldred? He's run several times before.
That's right. Yeah. Now I'm like trying to remember. I totally remember. I know the name, but I don't know the face.
Yeah.
I heard Steve Kemp.
Steve Kemp. I was just going to say, yep. I've heard Steve Kemp. I've heard Brad Bennett.
Adam Heaton. Is it Adam Heaton?
I've heard
Jeff?
Austin.
Matt Heaton.
Matt Heaton. Oh, he ran last time, but then
so
he
too,
pulled
yeah.
out.
I don't know what the circumstances.
I don't know the circumstance either.
So what I want to do is once we get the candidates all signed up, after the primaries, I want to interview all the candidates that are running, like the narrowing it down.
Mm-hmm.
So the primaries in August, everybody.
Yeah.
So after the primaries, I want to interview all of them too, because I want to give them an opportunity to give a platform. Be like, hey, this is what I'm running on.
Which I think is awesome. Like they need to be able to do that. Did I say Brad? Brad Bennett?
Brad Bennett. Yep.
I've heard he's thinking about it anyway.
Yep. Okay. Well, it sounds like
we'll see who actually shows up because I said, like, I don't know if these guys are going to or not. Like I've heard other names too. And yeah, once they officially make it, I'm happy to give endorsements. So I don't want you to think that I'm not okay with giving endorsements.
So I got to ask though about, let's go back to water.
Yeah.
We always have talks about the water, but do you think our plan is sufficient? Is the plan that we have in play sufficient?
So water's been one of those things that when I came in, right, because there's a lot of fear in this area of,
there's a lot of fear
we have enough
outside
water,
of this area.
Right?
I'm at like 6 weeks running. Somebody that doesn't live here texting me about water, like
for our area.
The ABC. Hey, did you see this article? Right, for our area, like the ABC article that ran, and there was, I think something went. I got a good friend, Brian Hiltz. Shout out to Brian Hiltz. I love you, bro. He's a poop engineer, right? So he works for waste management facilities all over the country, right? Huge company. And we were brought up in their poop treatment conference, Southern Utah, out of the drought. And they were, St. George was specifically pointed out in these conferences. And it's a deal. It's a deal.
It is. And
we're in a battle.
Yeah.
There was an article on ABC National News about climate change that had about a paragraph and a half about St. George specifically.
Which is insane because all of the stuff I've heard too, like the John Oliver hit piece.
I saw the John Oliver.
I lost my mind, dude. I'm like, you didn't even share valuable information.
It was a hit piece that was totally
and his makeup
spun.
looked horrible in the video too, because it was during COVID and it was like he was doing it out of his house.
Yes.
And his makeup was all jacked up. I'm like, oh, dude, this is the worst episode I've ever seen. And last week tonight, I actually kind of liked that show. There was a lot of good stuff that I've heard him say, and he gives a good valid like other opinion.
Right.
After COVID, I can't watch him anymore.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I never really watched him before, but I did.
But
see
yeah,
that piece,
that was
and
a
it
horrible hit
like,
piece.
Come on, dude. I mean, I get what he's trying to do, but it's not helpful.
He wasn't giving helpful information.
Right. So I do think it's something that we absolutely need. Warner Valley Reservoir. We need
which we have.
Wash.
It's already there, right? Like
no, it's not. We're battling the federal government.
So we need Uncle Sam.
We need the BLM is who's holding it up right now. It's our local BLM actually that's holding it up right now.
It isn't Uncle Sam. It's the local BLM.
The local. I mean, of course, the federal ties into that as well, but that's where we're having the biggest issues right now is just getting that red tape down. And we need it. We need Warner Valley Reservoir. If we had Warner Valley Reservoir right now.
What's the holdup so far?
That is the red tape with the federal government.
But when you say red tape,
they're trying to do a three-way land trade, and so
three-way, everybody.
Michelle Tanner said three-way.
Three-way headlines. I can see him tomorrow.
I'm going to quote that out of context.
Oh my gosh!
I'm
it's going to be in the Trib.
Used to that.
That's the only way I'm getting quoted in the Trib, Jeff. There's no way they were going to put my quote in that Trib article, dude. There's no way.
Just say something about drag queens and you'll be in the Trib because they love drag queens, the Tribune. I'm convinced that the writers over there like closet drag queens because they love it so much.
Oh my gosh.
There's 15 plus articles on me alone and a lot of it, and it all has to do with drag. And a lot. I mean, it's it's bad anyway from
You're
the
so
Tribune. We don't even
you're
have
fed
to-
up with it.
Oh,
You're fed
I
up
am
with it. You're like,
so
listen,
fed up with the
we
garbage.
need a news article, a news outlet that people have access to. The 435
Oh
podcast is
my
going to deliver
gosh.
for everybody. I promise.
Oh, I sure hope so. I think you guys will do awesome.
Well, okay.
So
I got
yeah, so
sidetracked.
Warner Valley, we need that, and I think we will push through and get it done. But yes, it's being held up with this land negotiations right now. The secondary water, through the water treatment plant, that needs to all, graveyard wash. We do have the funding for that. That is going to go through. That is going to get done. And I was just up yesterday, actually. They've got that Tokerville reservoir that they're working on right now. So there is like this 20-year plan right now with the Conservancy District. I will say, though, and of course, we always have cycles in the earth, right? Drought, rain. I mean, we're going to be flooding here soon, probably. It's like it's cyclic. But if we had these places to store water, like Warner Valley Reservoir would be filled this year. Right? With the amount of rainfall. And
I told Jeff it was like January, right? I think January, Jeff, where I was like, if this was 1910, every male would be out working on that dam right now.
We'd be building a dam right now.
We'd be building a dam right this second.
Right. Yeah.
And we'd hopefully be just finishing up.
Right.
Truthfully.
Yeah.
But that's not how it happens anymore.
Yeah.
The Santa Clara Dam, it broke like 7 times from like 1865 into the 1900s. It just kept breaking. I'm like, over a 10-year period, like, can you imagine? It breaks and every male in town is just like, oh, son of a... We just finished that, right? We gotta go do it again. Right?
So true.
And we're over here.
But now we're battling over the turtles
with our potato
with
chips,
the BLM.
watching YouTube,
It's true.
Side note, Lake Powell is expected to rise 50 to 90 feet.
I was just going to say, I heard 50, but yeah.
But the crazy thing though is we also, this is also what muddies the water. We bring up, when we talk about Washington County water, we bring up Lake Powell, and then all of a sudden we've lost all control of the water that is actually on our county, falling on our county, that can actually get enough water for all of us. 7 million acre feet. I already know because I went to the water, utahwater.org, I think is what it is. The water, you can download the Excel that tells you exactly the amount of flow at every well, at every river that flows into Washington County.
Yeah.
We get 7 million acre feet of water. Guess how much is done through industrial and municipal water sources, M&I?
How much?
Well over 90%.
1 million of the 7.
Wow.
1 million.
Yeah.
All residential, every retail property, all of the industrial, because we have so much industrial, right? We build all kinds of stuff around here. We don't build anything, right? I was exaggerating.
Yeah.
We only use 1 million acre feet of water for municipal and industrial. When I pressed Zach Renstrom, after the What's Up Down South, saw him in the hallway, I said, if we're only using 1 million out of the 7, you're telling me that 6 million acre feet of water is going to agriculture or is non-potable?
Or going downstream.
Or going to the golf courses.
Yeah, well over 90%.
Because I thought the golf courses were included in the industrial and municipal water systems. But you just told me.
Well, funding, I'm saying they're not including it in the cost. They're not
because
calculating
they don't need
the cost of water because that cost is being paid for by us through our utility fees,
right?
And
So.
But here's why
I think
Lake
the
Powell,
water is also not going into. Do you see what I'm saying? Is it industrial municipal? If it's not, how is it getting calculated?
I think it's being calculated in the municipal. It should be because it's municipally owned. So the golf courses.
So that's what I would be guessing, right? So I want some clarity on out of the 6 million acre feet that is in the wells and the streams and everywhere around us, right? I get that some portion of it must be, really salted or there's contamination of some kind.
Right.
But what kind of contamination? Are we talking radiation?
Well,
is it because we're the downwinders? Or like, why can't we drink 6 million acre feet of water? What's wrong with it?
Yeah. And if it is contaminated, and again, it's expensive, right? Like desalination processes and arsenic and these things. But if
the
we
water's
truly,
there.
right. I was going to say, like, we have to be forward thinking and looking at, okay, what's the latest technology? What can we do? Because we all know, they banked on Lake Powell pipeline for so long that I think they drug their feet on what can we, just like you're saying, like, what about our local water that's right here in front of us?
What can we do that's just right here?
Right.
That actually doesn't even affect anything else. And, if you're talking about like environmentally, let's talk about if you don't let recreation on it and it's just a lake.
Yeah.
Lakes are good.
Yeah.
Lakes do great. They feed all kinds of animals and plants and, all kinds of stuff, right?
Right.
There's obviously the environment is something we need to take into account as we grow, right? Like pollution and all that stuff. It is an important thing. I think it's also another of these things that gets thrown into the woke conversation.
Yeah.
I just truthfully, I hate the word because I'm like, it's just not giving clarity to anybody on what that actually means because there's environmentalism and then there's tree hugging, people that are smearing oil all over art pieces in Europe because of climate change. Like, come on, like, what are we doing?
Right.
The fact that we're so arrogant, we think we can impact the world's like weather system when you just look at how insignificant humans really are in so many different ways. And, these massive currents and these massive things that there's a lot of change that happens, but asteroids happen too. And they've changed our planet lots of times, right?
Yeah.
And in a significantly larger way than we'll ever be able to do it, unless we drop nukes on each other, which I think everybody agrees is a bad idea.
Right. Well, and as long as people aren't, the problem is, and I love the term woke. I use it all the freaking time. So, but
Fair enough.
I use that.
I'll be the anti-woke guy.
I know, right? But people are trying to use these fabricated agendas for more government control.
Right.
And
we need
that's
less of that.
where I get up in arms is, is there climate, issues to an extent? Sure, of course. Are there water issues? Sure. Are there, all of these, are there some social issues? Sure, of course. Like all these things exist to an extent, but I'm not going to go out there and advocate for these things and fabricate and exaggerate these things to ultimately have more government control because that's what a lot of these people are really arguing for.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So do you think the water plan is adequate at the moment? Are we moving in the right direction?
I think that I really like Zach Renstrom. I've had some really great conversations with him.
I do too. He just, his statement to me was, it's too expensive to clean it. I'm like,
hey, Rob, I do remember Zach talking about that. There's a huge aquifer under Warner Valley, but the only way to purify it is through reverse osmosis, and it was too expensive to do that.
The water, the 7 million that I'm calculating, that's just streams and wells. It's just streams and wells. So it's actively, it's like moving water. We already have access. So it's not like
nothing underground.
Yeah, nothing underground. And I guess some of it would be underground, right? Because the wells.
Is that including the amount that has to still stay down the Virgin River for the fish? They
I don't know that.
They have all of these environmental requirements that, these minnows and these fish, you have to have X amount that stays and goes downstream. So I don't know if that's including that number, but.
So this is the weird thing, right? Is that if at one point you dam every drop of water, right? And you hold on to every single drop, at one point we can clean it and then send it back down and start that flow process over again. You have to dam it for a small period of time and then you can open it up again. I can't imagine that the environmental damage of us over maybe 2 seasons holding onto the water before it starts kicking back up again is really going to dramatically increase the downflow of the Virgin River. Because
Rob, won't you please think of the minnows? Think of the
I
minnows.
think the minnows will actually be fine.
What about the turtles?
How many turtles and minnows have gone with no water before?
That's what is holding up currently some of the Graveyard Wash project is they found evidence that there might be a turtle.
I'm going to lose my mind about the turtles. They're not even native.
I know.
They're not native.
I'm with you, bro. I know.
Oh my gosh. And we're the funny thing is that what ends up happening, we're the Mojave Desert and crashes into the Rockies, right? So like if you think about it, if you go really high up onto the planet, the Mojave Desert ends, right? All through, Nevada and California, and the Rockies start right here. And it happens in 45-minute drive, right? You all of a sudden get into Bryan Head, and they're not specifically the Rockies, but the mountain range that ends up turning into the Rockies itself. It's the end of the desert. So you've pushed the desert turtles all the way to the brink of their extinction because of Nevada, which in Vegas is the reason why all these turtles start moving, right? And they moved them from some other area to St. George as that's how they got here, is that they moved them from another area that was endangering them.
Right.
It's crazy to me.
Oh, it's absolutely crazy. Like, why would we put that over human life? Like, what's needed for
Can
humans
we just
to
make
be
it a mascot
sustained here?
and then we'll just have them all in captivity? And every 10 people have to have a turtle. So then that way we don't have to worry that they're not going to get taken care of.
Right.
I saw a hawk carrying one off and it was crazy. I was like, that's a meal for that hawk. He was hungry.
Oh, wow.
So the water's there. Of the budget, kind of going back to that though, what are you proud of out of the budget? And I didn't even believe it's 415 already. Holy
the prioritization of saying, wait a minute, like, what is the proper role of government? Like, we're increasing leisure services 34% when we're saying we can't properly fund our police officers and our fire unless we raise your taxes. Like, to me, that doesn't compute. And so I am glad that through bringing some of that conversation to light, which actually really put me in the crosshairs, it pitted a lot of the city staff against me. It pitted some of the community against me who felt like I was somehow now anti-police, when that wasn't at all. In fact, it was the opposite. I'm saying, let's prioritize our police. Let's budget them first. They should be line item number one. Right. And then, obviously our infrastructure, our water, our streets, things
Public works, sewers.
We have to have, right?
Yep.
Some of those capital expenditures and projects, of course. But then all of these other things, like a new golf course clubhouse that was $2.5 million or something in that range. And I voted against that because I literally said when I voted against
2.5?
it. Yes, I literally said it was 2.5, 2.1. It's been almost a year ago
Somebody
now.
run the price per square foot on that remodel.
It was around the $2 million mark. And I just said, look, I get it. Like, we have to maintain the things that we have. But if you're telling me we can't properly pay our officers unless we raise taxes, this $2 million is going for our officers. Sorry.
Agreed.
So to me, it's the prioritization. And so this year actually is the first time I'm told in budget history that they brought in a consultant to sit down with each council member and say, what are the priorities, right? Because we're here representing the people. What do the people prioritize?
Yep.
And so I think this year's budget, I'm hoping, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping it's going to be more in line now with prioritizing the proper role of government and public safety and those needed absolutes first.
When do we see that?
I think it's our meeting in 2 weeks that we have a budget work session. I mean, we've had a few work sessions where we've, gone through some of what are our priorities, but we haven't seen actually now
like a first draft or something like that.
The draft, exactly.
Yeah. So what are you not proud of so far?
It's been such a learning experience that there's always those times where it's like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have said this that way, or better or more tactful. But ultimately, there's some things like I wish I would have been more aggressive on. But it's all learning too. It's like, I don't feel like there's been any major things that's like, oh my gosh, I totally blew that. But there has definitely been some times or some meetings that I wish I would have been like more aggressive on a stance. So I guess I would say overall, just learning how to choose my words. The funny thing is that
when I said, what are some things you regret? You said, I regret not being more aggressive. Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is that aggressiveness, right, is what people would normally aside is be like, oh, maybe I said something that I shouldn't have said, where you're like, no, there was more I needed to say that I didn't say. And I love that about you. I love that. That's good. And those are when it comes especially to our political system, the way we do elections, right? If you disagree, you got to be able to speak up. Yeah. You got to be able to say what you mean, synthesize an idea and get it out into the world. And then you got to go do it too, right? Like you got to actually go do the work that you say you're going to do.
Yes.
And do you feel like you've gone to work for St. George, for the city?
Absolutely feel like I've been doing as much as I possibly can. Yeah. It frustrates me though the inefficiencies in government because I'm such a, can I swear on this? I'm such a get shit done person. Like
you can for sure swear.
That's I was like, wait, am I going to get bleeped?
Jeff
that's
told me
literally,
twice not to say that.
That's literally my motto is get shit done.
Yeah, just get it done.
And so that it does frustrate me sometimes in government because I'll see an issue, you know, I'll shoot out a message or a phone call right to the applicable people in government and say, I see this problem. This is what we need to do. And I just want it done now. Mm-hmm. Like, let's write the ordinance today. Let's pass this tomorrow. Let's get this done. But unfortunately, it's not always that quick, right, in government. And sometimes it's a good thing in certain aspects that some things don't go through right away.
Right.
But that is something that I'm trying to find, like, okay, how can we make things more efficient? How can we get this done? So, but I'm trying to do everything I can on my end and learning how to do it and how to best work with others. That's the other thing, right? It's like, I've learned that I'm 1/5, right? Like, I can't get anything done, just me. I have to have 2 others in my corner.
Yeah.
And so learning how to, because I'm not political, like, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to like lie to your face and tell you one thing so that you vote with me, right? Or like, I don't play that game. Right. And it doesn't go well with others. Like, I've literally
Do you feel that is, at some level, it's at the city council right now, that
and sometimes that hurts me because I know that there's other members of the council who probably do like fundamentally side with me, but because they feel maybe I say it in like too aggressive of a way or not tactful enough, they feel like they have to distance themselves maybe from me, which ultimately hurts the cause, right? Because I need 2 others in order to really get much done. So it's learning how to work with others and those, because I'm
leadership's hard.
Yeah. And with the council, though, like, I think the leadership is most important coming from the mayor because I see that kind of executive side of where the strong leadership really needs to come from. And then the council members, like, yes, like, we need leadership skills too, obviously. But we also need that cohesiveness in some ways of
like, how are we getting this done? Let's put our teamwork hat on. Like, we're huddling for a game, right? And we're like, hey, we may not all want to do it the exact same way, but let's all say, hey, we're in this together. We want to make progress.
Right.
I've heard that it's like a deadlock. There's no progress being made at city council. That's what I've heard, right? And so I'm interested to see the election. I don't necessarily want to dive too much into that because, you know, it's not necessarily a helpful conversation, but I am curious. It's 4:21. And I could ask like 52 more questions. How are we doing on time?
I'm good. Okay? I mean, okay. I don't, if there's, other specific, I've got people coming to my house at 6. So I should probably. I got day night too. I got day night. Yeah. We won't go that long, but
Rob's got another 3 hours.
You guys are welcome to come over too, by the way.
I wanted to.
6 o'clock.
Nice. 6 o'clock.
Party.
Oh yeah. The economic development is this huge conversation, right? Because we have to balance growth, both in jobs for the people that live here and make money here, right? And then also for future, because economic development will mean infrastructure for, you know, the organization that is the city, right? And so they have to plan ahead a little bit. So there is a vein of connectedness that the economic environment is directly impacted by the city council, right? And the county commissioners is another level of where that can really heavily be impacted on. How do you feel like St. George City as a whole is doing in the economic development sector? But then how do you feel like the county's doing?
So I come from the mindset of the best philosophy when it comes to economic development, housing. It actually comes back to the Thomas Sowell philosophy on these things is get government out. Let the private sector do what it's going to do. Like, make the climate as suitable and conducive for the private sector as we possibly can in government, which is usually by stepping out of the way, by removing as much of the red tape and, you know, requirements and laborious processes that go into some of these things as possible, and let the free market, the private sector, take care of it. And so I get frustrated when I see that we are involved too closely in some of these areas. Or, you know, for instance, we have an ordinance 10-1-3A, which essentially says that unless the government has specifically stated that this use of your land and property is allowed in this zone, it is automatically prohibited. What? How is that American? I mean, since when is it the burden of the people to prove their use of liberty to the government?
Right.
No, the burden's on the government to prove our reason, our public safety issue for, refraining some of that liberty. So there's things like that.
Have you seen that? Like, have they wielded that clause?
Yes. And
recently?
So where this actually came up, then this is, another thing, I guess.
I feel like they would have already listed everything that you could possibly do, but maybe there's some things.
No, this comes up. And so actually, you asked me earlier, like, what are you proud of, that you've done on the city council? So this was another area where a resident, Zach Stuckey, actually brought to me that he had been trying for like 2 years
I remember this.
to get this mobile barbershop business going.
That's right.
And the city kept shutting him down, saying it's not allowed use. It's not. I'm like, what? Like, we're supposed to be business friendly here. Like, right? We should be driving economic development. Why are we like stopping entrepreneurship and brilliant ideas from coming in? Like,
when he's not doing anything wrong.
Right.
Like, wait till if somebody came out and be like, hey, there's this barbershop over here and there's like 52 guys hanging out and they're all drinking. Like, okay, maybe then we're like, hey, wait. You can't do that. But if it's not disturbing others, get out of the way.
Yeah. And so that was one thing that, with the help of Zach, that I was able to, bring to the council. And eventually we did get a mobile business ordinance passed to have it as an allowed use.
Instead of changing the other rule.
That's the thing is with the current council, it won't get changed because that's one area where, but again, it also.
Like, we don't know what we don't know and we're terrified of it.
Well, and that's the thing is it comes back to lawsuits too, in some ways. So much of what goes on in government, I've learned now a lot over the last year, is we want to protect government from the people, from potentially suing us for something, right? And so rather than what's best for people, like what's best for, like let's follow the Constitution or, these fundamental principles that make America great and capitalism, free market and all that. It's how do we best protect ourselves as a government entity?
Yeah.
Which I don't love that focus, but that is a lot of
that's
what
a defense
the
mentality.
Mindset. Yep, exactly. Which
fear
to an extent, I understand some of it, but like we were talking earlier, like the nuance of, but at the end of the day, what are we here to do? Like, we're here to serve the people, to represent the people. What's the role of government? Are there going to be things that slip through the cracks? Maybe, but let's address that as they come rather than just throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying, nope, none of it. You can't do it.
What do you think? What do you think about like the current big projects like Desert Color and Tech Ridge? What do you think about those? Because those are combos, right? They're economic development in a big way,
right?
But I don't think we've seen the fruits yet because it's such a long process.
Yeah, such a long process. And again, like I'm for whatever the free market, the private sector, private developers want to come in and see that they'll be profitable, right? In this area. And I think Desert Color is really cool. Like the way they've done the mixed housing and stuff out there that I think early on people just thought, oh, that's never going to work.
When they got school out there right out of the gate, right? They were able to, create
and they're
something
private,
quickly.
They're doing their own thing.
Kind of pseudo-private. Sitla owns that land.
If I could be involved, like I wasn't involved with the birth of Tech Ridge, right? But if I could have been, I wouldn't have wanted it to be a CDA and this like public-private partnership. I would have wanted Tech Ridge to do their own thing and be private and not have the city's hand and the government's hand so heavily involved in that process.
Yeah. Why do you think they did that?
I think that government gets this mindset of talking about the economic development of, oh, we have to be the ones to bring this in, where it's like, no, I think we could just have a conducive environment to business that was friendly and low taxes, and they'll come in on their own. We live in a pretty freaking awesome place.
Yeah.
Like, let's just make it advantageous for them to come, not this, we have to create it. We have to be involved. We have to have our hand in it. Like, I get so frustrated when we talk about like the design of buildings and we make people bring in their colors. It's like, build whatever the hell you want. It's your property. Like, unless you're infringing on someone else's freedom and someone else's property rights, like, yeah, then we should probably have a say as a city council, but I'm not going to tell you what shade of brown your building needs to be.
I was at the city council meeting when they were talking about the building going in on 300 West.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to shove a pencil in my eye.
You got to tell me, because not everybody knows about the building on 300 West. What are you?
Yeah,
what are you
talk about that.
So I don't know the entire length of process, but they made the developer go back and change the architecture because it was a little bit too high. It was like 2 feet too high.
Oh yeah, the one you're talking about.
Yeah, he had to change. There were some overhangs on the architecture, and the council didn't really like it, and so it's
and there's stuff like that all the time that I'm just like really, we're gonna make them go, and that's what I mean by like, let's make the process easier.
It's like people. You almost have to go in and you leave an offering at the foot of the city council before you make your statement. It's like the Mandalorian where they're like walking in and paying tribute to them. It's like, I don't like your gift. You don't get what you want.
Yeah, or buying up property. Like, I don't want the city buying up property so that we can have control over what goes there. Like, no,
I think that's
we don't need
insane.
that control. We don't need an electric theater. We don't need, it's like.
I think the electric theater is a great idea.
But let the private sector do it.
If it can support itself.
Yeah, let the private sector do it.
But arts historically have had a heavy collaboration with the government because you get, and I'm an art guy, right? I love it. I love the art around the corner. I love the art museum. I like seeing the statues everywhere. I like the murals. I think it's fun. I think it makes our environment unique to us.
So do you like 50,000 of your tax dollars going to those the art statues?
So it's not 50,000 of mine, right? So like when I look at it, it's like, okay, well, what would the cost be for me? And if 10,000 people also agreed with me, then, you put it up for, the group of people to do that, right? I'm not going to say that the principle of the thing is correct, because back to the point where I'm like, the government really should stay out of everything. I really do believe that. But I can't say I don't like the art part, right? Yeah. And I also like, if something happens, there's a police that I could call, or if there's a fire that I know somebody's going to come help me, right?
Yes.
So there are social programs where I do like, but as long as there's some clarity as to how much is there, what are we actually using it for? Is this something we can get behind? And is there not an option in the private sector to support it? Could we go from... Because I hear this all the time from developers. They're like, well, we start it and then the city takes it over later. And I'm like, that seems like a lose situation for the city. Why would they do that? Like, you start it and then they take it over and manage it later? That's a win-lose. That's not a win-win, right? And that kind of stuff drives me nuts, right? It's because the city's taking over the long-term challenges that are going to face with that thing, where that's not really how the development process should have gone, right? It should be like, maybe the city starts it and then the private organization takes it over because now it's profitable. And that's what a subsidy is really intended for. It's to get things started so that now the government can stay out of it, right? Public transportation. We just had to get it started, right? And then you're like, okay, now let's hand this over to a private sector that can manage it and do those things, right? So
I have a quick question for you, though, because bringing up the art. So now that I know, like, you're an art fan, so I want to get your perspective on this, because you also seem pretty libertarian to me.
Yeah, totally libertarian.
Would you be comfortable with them raising your taxes to help fund public safety so that they can maintain the amount that they're spending on the arts and the parks and the recreation? Or would you rather some of that funding go toward public safety and not raise taxes?
Public safety should be the number one thing.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then if at that point, now you go back to the people and say, hey, instead of saying we're going to raise taxes for the police.
Go to a rap tax or.
Yeah. You raise the taxes for the thing that you're raising the taxes for, right? Like it ends up being a priority, because we try to play this like shuffling the game where you put the ball under this one. You're like, I'm going to trick you.
Right.
And pull your attention over here, but it's actually here.
It's called gaslighting.
Gaslighting.
Yep.
Right. Gaslighting. Smarter.
Great marketing campaign,
That's
a marketing campaign.
That's how I felt when last summer we were going through the budget process about
you're insulting my intelligence.
I'm not.
No, that's like the feeling is that, like, you're gaslighting me. I feel like you're trying to pull one over on me.
I was going to say, you're smarter than me anyway. I can't insult your intelligence.
not even close.
But that's how it felt, because public safety, there shouldn't even be a question about, do we need, well, hey, guess what? For the growth, we need 3 more fire trucks. Cool. Let's get the fire trucks. Instead of talking about, hey, we need to raise taxes for the fire trucks so we can, build this extra park. But the park's important. St. George is a great place, and we need to have those kind of things.
Yeah.
But we should be talking about that after public safety is already taken care of.
And a lot of times we're addressing it all at once, right? Because it's the budget. It's all at once. And then how many times do we change these things? Well, if the budget we set ahead of time for the arts no longer covers the budget, then that's the addition to the line item. It's not to say, okay, if the $50,000 had, there's got to be times where, is it every annual that you relook at the 50 grand, or do you say, hey, we're going to do this for 5 years and do this project and then look back and say, hey, is this continuing to do what we want it to do?
Right.
And give the opportunity the new city council can say, okay, hey, after so much time, we have a reset to look at the whole budget. Do you guys do it that way, or is it literally every single year?
It's an annual review
every
process
single
of the budget.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if
we
1
should
year,
really be going through every line item every year.
if at 1 year we're like, well, we can't cover the art around the corner because we need to go build a firehouse and we need to hire some people. Right. And if revenue comes in and we can, whatever the excess budget goes into, and we can tap into that later, right? Reallocate the funds later on. We can kick it back up again and start again, right? It doesn't have to be forever.
I think too, if there was an adult conversation around that, there's a lot of money in St. George, and there's a lot of private donations that would come in to fund art around the corner.
That's been some of my feeling too. So I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff, because even with, I've got young kids. I love the parks. I get accused all the time of, oh, you want to just have concrete everywhere and you hate parks and I'm like, no, I don't hate these things. I think they're great. No one's advocating that we take a bulldozer to these things here in St. George.
You're an anti-parkite.
Right.
Parkite.
Parkite. I love it.
Anti-parkite.
It's not the worst thing I've been called.
Is that a Ron Swanson? Is that a Ron Swanson?
I think it's a Seinfeld reference. You're an anti-dentite.
Anti-dentite.
Yeah.
Yes, nice.
Love it.
He's Jewish for the jokes. No, just keep going. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But that's been one thing I brought up in council meetings is we have a lot of generous people here that have money. Like we have big businesses. Like what about going to one of these big businesses and say, hey, you employ a lot of people. They benefit from having a park in the community. Mm-hmm. We need $10,000 or whatever it is for this basketball court, or would you want to sponsor that? And we'll put a sign brought to you by X and X a business.
Yeah, can you imagine the mayor or the city council collectively saying, hey, guess what? This year we needed, again, three more fire trucks. We used that money to get the fire trucks. We don't want to raise your taxes. However, we want to keep art around the corner. Would you be willing to donate towards art around the corner or whatever it is, Yeah. And I think there would be plenty of people willing to do that.
I think so too.
Well, and then we get into these systems of things, right? Where we've always done it this way. Mm-hmm. But Michelle, we'll be heartbroken if we can't do Christmas lights in the park this year. Think all the kids that would be sad. I would be so bummed. Right. I love the lights, right?
Yeah.
I love
it.
Yeah. Like, dang it.
Right.
How do we raise some money for some Christmas lights, right? Like
I remember one year in Salt Lake City, they ran out of money. It was, if I remember right, $75,000 to do the fireworks at Liberty Park. And they didn't have any money for it left in the budget. And
all those people doing all those drugs in Liberty Park didn't get to have are you telling me that they didn't get to have their fireworks show?
No, but a current, I can't remember who it was, but an NFL football player funded the whole thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Beautiful.
Cool,
Yeah.
Happy for all those people in that park that sleep there. No, I don't think maybe that's not like that, but and that's good. It's this balance. We have to have a running discourse, and then people have to be aware of what is in the budget, right? We need a simple way of looking at the budget and honest, clear records as to how people are voting and
right.
Where do they even keep the voting records for like the city council meetings?
So
I can't find it on the city.
I was going to say this actually came up recently from Paula Smith. She came and gave public comment asking that we do closer to what Washington City does, which I don't follow Washington City closely, but I guess they post, I guess it's very easy access of the voting records just right there on the website. And so, I mean, ours is posted, but from my knowledge, it's only on, like, you have to go to that individual meeting. You have to scroll through and look at, what of the minutes of what each thing and what each vote was. It's not like you can just
So is that a project are they working on that to make it easier?
She just brought that up actually a couple of weeks ago. So I think it is something that we're looking into, and they're revamping the city's website and stuff right now.
Who's in charge of doing those things?
So we have David Cordero as our media media director. So I think a lot of that would go through him. I mean, ultimately, our city manager, which we have a new city manager, John Willis. So, and he's been really great.
So is he interim or he's full blown?
Full blown, yeah.
How long is his contract? Does he have a contract timeline?
I think it was 5 years if there is a contract, but it's, I mean, he is the now appointed. It's not an interim position. Yes.
Okay. So they approve the appointment, and then hopefully he doesn't leave. Please don't quit, John.
Yeah. Don't quit, John. You're not allowed to.
And truthfully, I don't know. I've only met John a couple of times. He was super nice as a real estate agent. I was like, I have no idea how development stuff works. Like, will you, sit down with me for an hour? And he showed me the site, and he did everything he could to help me understand better, which was awesome of him to do. Right.
Yeah.
And that went a long way. So for me, I'm like, great. This is cool that he's in that position, but it's a heavy role to play.
Oh yeah. I don't envy that. Like, I would not ever want that position.
Yeah, that position is full of pain, right? Yeah. And so I think we have to have compassion for each other in the roles that we play, and the decisions that we ultimately have to make, impact a lot of people. So you're gonna always have that percentage that just get upset, but we can't waver. We have to be steadfast in the name, with the idea that there's always a percentage that don't like you or don't like what we're doing.
Yep.
We have to be steadfast and say, is this right? Is this wrong?
Yeah.
Keep moving forward.
And you can't actually, at the state Republican convention last week, Ron DeSantis gave a really powerful speech. And one of the things that I loved that he said, he was talking about elected officials, and he says, when you become an elected official, you don't just get in there to become a potted plant and, put your finger in the wind, and whatever the way the wind's blowing, that's the way you go. Like, those people are absolutely useless, and they're causing way more harm than good. You can't make your decisions based off of whether people are going to like you or not.
Right.
You make your decision because it's the right thing to do, because it's the role of government, that proper role.
Yeah.
That's why you make the decision.
Right.
There's always going to be people who hate you. And so I cringe when I hear or see other elected officials that I know they know what the right thing to do is, but I also know that they're putting their finger up to see which way the wind's blowing.
Right. Because they want to make sure they're padding their next move. Right. Well, so do you think he's because I don't follow Ron enough to know, do you think he's all for term limits across the board?
Term limits? I don't know his stance on term limits. Ron's.
Yeah, I'd be interested because how do you eliminate that? How do you break the potted plant? Like, you're relying on them to make their own conscious decision to not stay put, but they can't do that.
And waking up the voters to, rally, to get organized, because
the mob,
too many times
Federalist
we're
Papers is the mob.
Complacent, right? Or uneducated voters getting out there and, oh yeah, I recognize that name.
But that's the standard, not necessarily. We're asking them to do an exception, because the rule is lazy mob, do nothing, not pay attention. That's actually the rule. We're asking them to go outside of themselves and do something on a consistent basis that they're not capable of doing. Yeah. And so the system should be set up to where that person can't root themselves there. They gotta move out.
I'm all for term limits. Yeah. I don't know Ron's stance on that.
It's on the record.
Hopefully he's for term limits.
I'm for term limits. Secession. I went from secession. I was like, we got to leave the whole government. And then I'm like, no, I do. I have a romantic
Federalist Papers.
I know, I did. I downloaded Federalist Papers. I understand, but I also understand why we're a republic, right? I understand that, and I believe in that because at a certain point there has to be an equal weight. And if we go to direct democracy, we've seen that there's tons of problems with direct democracy anyway.
Because 51% can cause a lot of
harm. It's easy to gaslight people that aren't paying attention and get to 51%, which we've had countless presidents do, right? And really over the last probably 35 to 40 years, from the president all the way down, we've gaslit the America. And so that's my position is this: you pull the rug out from every single congressional member. You don't. Everybody's got to be new. We got to have new leadership, new roles across the board. And if you only got the last couple of elected years, well, sorry, that's it.
Yeah,
we need a new generation of politicians to take over, because this one is not doing us a good job.
Yep, we absolutely need that, because what happens too a lot of times is, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but when I walked in to my first experience, right, as an elected official, I actually compare it to a lot like high school or middle school, where it's like people want to fit in, right? And so they're just trying to figure out like, oh, so how do we do things? Oh, okay, this is the way we've always done it. Okay, great. I'm going to do that because I want to fit in. I want everyone here to like me.
Yeah, I don't want to rock the boat.
And too many times that's the mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And it does take a strong personality to be able to go in and not just go with the flow of how things have always been. And so term limits, I think, could potentially fix some of that because you've got probably a higher rotation of not this clique of,
well, and then once you've served the seat, once you've sat there, you're the alumni now. Get out the seat, but you can't go back. No going back.
Right.
Like Mitt Romney, I feel like your run's over. Sorry, you got to be done. If you try to run for president, you fail. Sorry, you're out of the whole system. You got to bail.
You're done.
You're done. Get out of here. No, just kidding. John Adams, he ran a couple of times before he got it. But it's 4:45. Yeah. I appreciate you coming and chatting with me about this. We could keep going.
I was going to say, we could probably talk all day, so let's do it again.
We'll have a couple of episodes. We'll have you back.
I was going to say, there's so many more topics, I think. That
you like the idea, though? Like the project and what we're doing?
No, I do.
Okay,
I think it's so needed.
Tell your friends.
I'm so glad that you're doing it with elections. And like I said, like I'm happy to totally endorse candidates.
We're going to have a voting booth.
So we're
going to have a voter booth too. Okay. So Jeff and I are going to host the voter booth, and we'll have candidate information. We'll have information about each topic, right? Awesome. The big 5 topics, really. There's there's a handful of them, but then I have a questionnaire. Would you take the questionnaire? It's 7 questions, and it's just asking you what your thoughts are on water and the economic development, kind of like what we did here. But then you have like a written one, and that way I could put it on the website and be like, hey, this is Michelle's position on these things, and then this is Danielle's and Greg's and Jimmy's, and these are the positions of the candidates that are running. Right. And then you could look at them side by side and know, okay, this guy's different from this way, or maybe they're all the same, right?
Right.
But hopefully that'll give clarity to the voters of St. George. We want to rock the vote. We want to get a bunch of people out to vote because it's an important one. But primaries are important. And then registrations. We need to bump registrations. So
absolutely.
Make sure you register to vote.
Yes.
Get out there.
The most important election in St. George history, I will dare say, is right now.
August 15th is Tuesday, the primary.
Yep.
You got to be registered 11 days before that. So you got to get your registration in. We got plenty of time. This will probably be airing in June. You got plenty of time to get there, but primaries in August. To be able to vote there, you got to get registered. So that's it. But
you cannot vote in the general election if you're not registered before the primaries.
Right. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah. You gotta get to the, exactly. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you for being here.
Keep up the good work. Keep going.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.